Hello, my metalsmiths, beginners and beyond. Step into the no fear zone. Hi there, I'm BDK, metalsmith instructor and maker, and this is my no fear zone studio. So in our inaugural YouTube video, I am going to go over some stuff about torches and fuel, because I find that especially for beginners and beyond, but beginners especially, when you first use a torch and maybe you've got a couple of classes under your belt and you go home and you can't wait to take your next class, but you're not really sure about what to do at home. You really are hesitant to get a big acetylene torch. Maybe that's what you learned with, and you really don't want one in your house, or you're not really sure about propane with oxygen and how do you put everything together, and maybe even butane. You don't know what to get for your home studio. So I decided to put this together because I do teach a lot of beginning classes, and I like to get my students set up so that they can go home and start practicing right away with what they've already learned in the class. It's the only way you really learn anything is by practicing. So I always say practice makes better. So I thought what I'm going to do is put this together and see if we can alleviate some of your fear so that you can get past that and then get going and work with some fire. So down and dirty, I want to do something about our fuels first. So if somebody has ever asked you, so what kind of torch do you use? And you say, oh, propane, that's what I used in class, or a butane torch. So butane, propane, and acetylene are your fuels. And if you use propane oxy, then we add oxygen to the propane, which makes a hotter flame. So what the flame comes out of is actually the torch. So I just wanted to go there first because there are different torches for different fuels. So very quickly, I'm going to run over some of the properties of our propane, our butane, propane, and acetylene fuels, propane oxy. And there are other fuels out there, but we're going to talk about the most common fuels that students use who are going to different classes. So whether it's a workshop or at school or in a private studio, jewelry making conference, whatever that might be. So the most popular fuels. And we'll talk about what you can use to get started right now and get over some of that hesitation and fear. So I'm going to go ahead and start with acetylene. So some of you may have used acetylene in your classes. And that's probably one of the largest hesitations, is to get an acetylene tank. So acetylene, the fuel itself, gets up to about 4,000 degrees. So that's pretty doggone hot, 4,000 degrees. Now, I've got on this slide acetylene ambient air. So ambient air is the air that we breathe. It's the air we're pulling the oxygen, and the torch would pull the oxygen out of the air into your hose, and out of the torch would come acetylene and ambient air. That's what creates our flame, oxygen, right? So if we had a candle and it was lit, then the little candle snuffer would, when you put it over the flame, would put the flame out. It would take the oxygen out of the air. There would be no air there. So acetylene ambient air is what we are speaking about. We aren't speaking about acetylene oxy, which is what welders use and some casters and that sort of thing. But this would be the most common, our acetylene ambient air. And what we see here is all the way over to the left, you see a grayish green tank. That's called a B tank. You would get those at a welding supply, and they would fill the tank for you and that sort of thing. So that's the tank, and attached to it is actually the hose, and attached to that is the handle, and attached to that is the torch. So you can see that right down here. You see the red hose, that's the fuel hose, and you see then a regulator. Not going to go over that. It's easy though. It's like one side lets the fuel start, and then the other adds the oxygen to the mix, and not oxygen, the air, it lets the air in, and then out comes a flame. So, and then you see the handle and then the torch, which is the little curved thing. The gray tank is my tank, and see how ugly it is? So you can buy brand new tanks from, jewelry supply places, but they're just going to, and it's empty. So they're going to, you'll see them online. You can order, you look up acetylene and there's a tank. Well, when you go to your welding supply, they're going to get your acetylene, because you'd have to take that brand new tank and have it filled with acetylene. They're just going to give you an old tank. So like mine. And then you're going to put your torch, the red hose over here, you're going to attach that to that old tank, and it's full of acetylene. So really, if you're going to start using acetylene, then just go and tell them you want a tank. And my one suggestion would be to get the tank on top of my gray tank. You see there's like a spigot that you can turn, like a water spigot. Whereas on the other, there isn't one on top of that tank, that grayish green tank, because you would use a chuck key to do that. It's a lot easier if you get and so you can just ask them, give me one that has more like a handle on it so I can turn it on and off. But anyway, that's acetylene. Gets up to 4,000 degrees, and you would just attach your torch to it. And I will show you, I do have right here, let me go ahead and I'll show you. So I've got my acetylene torch right here. Here's the fuel hose, which is red, right? And then it's got the handle here. There's a knob here, and with that knob, it would turn this on after I've turned my regulators on. But, and this is actually the torch. So this is the torch that is attached to the handle. So that's actually the torch, and it's really a torch tip, but that's what the flame would come out of. And then there are other torch tips for that, so I would take it off and I could put another tip on here. So there's a larger one, here's a really little bitty one, and basically what this does is it's all going to be 4,000 degrees. It's a different flame, smaller flame, larger flame, right, as you change the tip. And so that's a great advantage to having acetylene or even propane, because you can change the tips because of the type of torch you get. That particular torch is a Smith acetylene torch. It's called a Silversmith acetylene torch. So that is acetylene, 4,000 degrees. Then we have propane and propane / oxygen. So you see different tanks here. Now, propane gets up to 3,500 degrees. So 4,000 for acetylene, and then 3,500 for propane. Propane, ambient air, the air here. So you see these two propane canisters, the blue one and then the black one below. And those you see, what you might hear them called plumber's torches. These particular torch heads that are on the tanks are not what plumbers use. Plumber's torch is bigger, fatter, whatever. And there are many different torches you can put on here. Lamp work, glass, enamel, enamel immersion, things like that might use a hot head on the propane. But these are different jewelry making torches. And the one below actually has a hose on it. And you see two little brass tips so it's got 3 tips, and you can change those out, and it gives you a different flame. So that's propane, 3,500 degrees. You keep going over though to the holders. You see 2 tanks. So the one red and blue, and the big chubby one, the white and the green down there. You might recognize the white tank. It might look like something that you have in your backyard on your barbecue grill, right? So that one is the fuel. It's the propane. The green tank is the oxygen. And on your blue and red, the way you can tell is there's a red cap on the blue tank and a green one on the red tank. And you can see the green hose coming out and the red hose coming out. So within the Smith, it's called a Smith little torch. So same maker, Smith, little torch for propane oxy there. And it's got two hoses. So it's got a red hose for the fuel and a green hose for the oxygen. And you see the tips, the little tips. So those are interchangeable. And again, that just is what is controlling the size of flame. So once you turn it on, it is what it is. If you want a different flame, you take that off, put another tip on. So that's propane oxy. And so you can use propane ambient air or mix it with oxygen. When you mix it with oxygen, though, the temperature without is 3,500 degrees, and the temperature with is a good 4,500 degrees. So it gets a lot hotter with the oxygen. It's a small flame with that little torch, which a pointy flame, and of course the flames change, but a pointy flame, and you're able to get in and out because the heat is so much greater that if you need to do some small operations, maybe, and it doesn't work 100% of the time, okay, you got to be pretty good with your torch. But if you, for small operations where you need to get in and out, propane is excellent. In other words, that higher temperature is excellent because you don't have to spend so much time trying to heat it up, and whatever that operation is you're trying to do, make a ball on something next to a stone or whatever it is, you can get in and out. You don't have to linger and perhaps cause something else to melt down on the other side of your piece. So propane oxy, hot propane, 3,500 degrees. You can also see, though, your propane is a little bit more cumbersome to use because you're actually going to be picking up a tank unless you have that other little torch head. And I don't know actually a whole lot of people that use those. I actually have both of those, I think, torch heads for propane, but I really don't use propane. I go from butane to acetylene. And speaking of butane, we're going to go there right now. So butane. I teach with butane. And the reason I teach with butane is I travel teaching, but I also teach with it in my studio because I don't want a lot of acetylene tanks in my studio. And I'm sure not going to travel with acetylene tanks and try and find somebody who can fill acetylene. I'm not going to have acetylene in my car traveling. And so I teach with butane. Butane gets up to 2,500 degrees. And so butane comes, you can get it with these all-in-one torches. And let me just show you real quick. This is an all-in-one torch. And what that means is here is the canister or the tank, if you will. So you saw the propane tank and the acetylene tank. So this is the tank for an all-in-one butane torch. The butane is in here, but the torch is attached permanently. So that's all in one. And the way that you fill it with butane is you have fuel that you can get at a cigar store or whatever. But you turn this over. Let me do this. This has, let's see if you can, this has a little nozzle on it. And if you remember Zippo lighters, maybe you don't, but they were not disposable. So you would turn it over and you just push down, and when it fills up, it spurts a little bit and you just pull it off. And then you would just turn this over and get going. Now, the caveat with that is that if you haven't used it that day and you needed to fill it, you'd go ahead and fill it with fuel, but you would wait 5 minutes for the fuel to settle. And about 5 minutes. And then when you need to refill it, you would wait 5 minutes for it to cool down a little bit. Then you would fill it, wait 5 minutes, and then go ahead and use your torch again. So I'm not a big fan of these, but the reason I'm not a big fan of these is because you can't sit down and use them all day long. So what I use is this. So this is actually a canister of fuel, butane, and this is like it's a no brand. It's an Oriental brand, whatever. I get mine at an Oriental food store, and it's very reasonable. I pay like $1 or $1.25 a can, and you can also get there's Coleman. You can get those at camping stores or Walmart, Target in the camping section. So Coleman is another brand, and it usually runs about $2.99 to $3.99 a can, but it lasts for a long, long time. So, so that is your butane. You see here again, I've got the all-in-one. There's different all-in-one types. The one in red is called a blazer torch. It's got a small flame. It's great for PMC, which is precious metal clay, and torch fired, and you can, to dry it out. And there's many different types of fuel also. You're looking for a refined fuel, butane, and when you go to one of these cigar stores or whatever, they know exactly what you're talking about. And you may be able to find them in, I don't know, Target. I really don't know because I've always gone to a cigar store. But you can look it up. You could probably get it on Amazon. But you want 5 times refined, 8 times refined. For all I know, they've got 12 times refined. It doesn't matter. So it's just a cleaner fuel, if you will. And then the torches. So so you see here, I've got 2 canisters, a Coleman canister and another canister here, down there. And the torch is attached to the canister. So I'm going to go ahead and show you now. Here's the canister, and here are 2 different torches. This is a Handy Flame torch. This is an Iwatani torch. There are others. There's Sterno torch heads, and I'm sure there are others, but these 2 are my favorite. And this one has a pointier flame. This one has a fluffier flame. And I use this for most everything I do. I use this for torch enameling because I like the bigger flame when I torch enamel. So you would just simply, again, you just take this off, and there is a stem here. And that stem, I would just take my torch, put it down, and that's it. Turn it on and start it. And you can see I can get a nice flame there, and then I'll just turn it off. So there's my torch. Now this is hot, so I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to put my cap back on. Okay. So I said the stem, and that's really one of the things, guys. It's not even so much the fuel. It's the stem, because your propane, your acetylene, your butane, all of these tanks have a stem where you're going to put something on top of it that allows the fuel to go through it. And that's really, like butane, for instance, if okay, there are all kinds of properties for fuel, but if that stem gets knocked off, then you have to worry about it. But you have to do a lot to do that. So even if I've got students, they may knock this over and there's a torch on it, and we haven't had an issue. But most of these really are safe. You must be respectful of all your fuels. You will do your research on, acetylene dissipates in the air, propane hangs around on the floor. You need good ventilation. And when I say good ventilation, you don't want to sit in a closet, with a light on, with the door closed, using anything, because there are fumes. So anyway, butane, I'm going to go back to butane here. One of the major reasons I decided to start with, in the No Fear Zone studio, with our torches is because of people coming to me, and they've been taking classes, but they don't get to go home and practice because they don't know which fuel to get. And sometimes what's messed them up is people are telling them, oh, no, don't do butane. Don't do it. It doesn't get hot enough. You can't do anything with it. You need to get a big girl torch, which means acetylene or whatever, propane oxy, I don't know. Or even better, well, why don't you use a real torch? So then that puts people off, and then they just don't know what to do because they don't want any of those fuels in their home studios. And consequently, they don't get to practice. And we all like to practice and with our torches. So that's really one of the reasons I did this. So I want you to know about butane, because with butane you can get up and going very rapidly, because butane and a torch will cost you maybe 30 bucks. You need other tools, and that's going to be another episode. And about setting up a simple bench so you can get going. And so what I want to do is show you quickly some jewelry. So this is the type of stuff you can do with 2,500 degrees with a creme brulee torch. This is not a creme brulee torch. It's a Smither's torch. Okay, so here you go. We've got, this is fusing. This is sterling silver on sterling silver fusing. This is tri-metal fusing, copper, brass, onto sterling silver, and so is this. These are 1 inch wide, 1 inch wide, and pretty hefty stuff. I haven't finished this one yet. And this one, you might be able to see a little bit of gold, so it was kambued first. But bracelets, you can make bracelets. Here's some more bracelets. These are all fine silver bracelets, and these are just 14 gauge. This is 12 gauge fine silver, and I don't know if we can get this sucker to focus real good, but this is a nice thick bracelet, and you can do other like cuff bracelets, and this one is this is actually fused sterling silver on sterling silver. And then we've got rings. So rings, so these are all things that people make, right? You're going to make, if you're making jewelry, you're going to make necklaces and bracelets and that sort of thing. This is a hollow form. Both of these are hollow form rings. This is actually a double knuckle ring to wear on 2 fingers, set a bezel on it, and it's quite the nice heavy silver. And this is another hollow form ring, and it is copper and sterling silver with bezel set on top with stones. And so again, large pieces, 2,500 degrees with a butane torch. Then you have pendants, just, you know, pendants where you would make a bezel and do your soldering. So any design. Now, one of the things about butane, you've heard me say the size, because what people really go by is the size of what you're trying to heat. So with butane at 2,500 degrees, all of the things that I just showed you, you can certainly do. When you get to something like, if you want to make an 18 gauge or 16 gauge cuff, and you want to solder a bunch of embellishments on top of it and that sort of thing, you're not going to be able to do it with butane. And so, but you certainly can do it with acetylene. So normally what you will be told is that 2 inches by 2 inches is about the boundary of what you can do with butane. Now, it depends on the technique you're using, whether it is fusing or soldering. But I want to show you, I'll show you again real quick here. This is a piece, this is torch enameled. And so you can do lots of torch enameling with butane. I love the torch enameling with butane, very controllable. And then this particular piece, the back plate is, we are talking about 2 inches and probably 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches across. And really what we're looking at is the bezel and getting that bezel soldered down and why you need so much heat. But this is done with butane. And so there you see the back plate. So it's a very large piece, and maybe just within the boundaries of the butane, but I'm telling you, you can do that with butane in your home studio. And here's some more, just little torch enameling, and this takes seconds. So you can do torch enameling with butane. I do mine on a tripod, but you can do torch enameling very easily. And this really is, it's seconds, it's not minutes. And here is just another example. This is called laminate. So this is sterling silver with brass and copper, and it is made into sheet. And then you can cut your sheet and make whatever you want out of it, rings and I've made pendants. And so again, just these are things that you can do, and I want you to know that you can do all of this with butane. So if you're itching to get started, this is really the way to go. So I've introduced you then to butane, propane, and acetylene. Again, now start from the bottom. Butane, 2,500 degrees. Propane, ambient air, 3,500 degrees. Acetylene, 4,000 degrees. And propane oxy, about 4,500 degrees. I didn't mention we do have acetylene oxy. That gets up to well over 5,000 degrees. And again, that's, welders use propane with oxygen, and some other casters, other metalsmiths who do other things. But the norm, it really is butane, propane oxy, and acetylene for just us, regular jewelry makers. So those would be how hot it gets. But 2,500 degrees will get you started, and I bet you'll be using that for quite a while. It took me years to get acetylene in here, and probably because I was stubborn, because everybody who was saying, you need to use a big girl torch, or you're using that creme brulee thing, I don't know, I can make great jewelry with that thing, and I never could justify getting acetylene. And one day I did, so I got it. But for years, I just used butane, and I only teach with butane. So I hope you've learned something, and from this, our No Fear Zone studio, I just want you to be able to feel comfortable getting a torch and starting to make your own stuff. And use a torch, as often as you can, so you can get better and better at it. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel, somewhere down there, there's a thing that says subscribe, and maybe even get notifications. And there's going to be more, and my next one will be setting up a simple bench and the tools that you need so that you can get going really fast so that you can practice. So with that, I'm just going to say goodbye from the No Fear Zone, and I hope that you, that you get going and learn fast, and gee, what do I hope? I hope that you enjoyed watching BDK, Metalsmith instructor and maker, in her No Fear Zone studio. And with that, I will see you the next time. Thanks so much.